I'm chairing this session. I have the pleasure to introduce Amit Kumar Pandey. I hope the pronunciation of the name is authentic. If not, correct me. He obtained his PhD in robotics. The title of his PhD was Towards Social Intelligent Robots in Human-Centered Environment. He got this PhD University of Toulouse. And his PhD was awarded with George Hero Award for the best PhD thesis in robotics in Europe. His interest in robotics and AI, and he's the co-founder of Being AI, the world's first transmedia AI company, and served as the chief scientist, CTO, and chief AI officer. He's also the founder and president of Socience AI and Robotics. He has served as the president, chief science officer, and the CTO of Hands-on Robotics recently. This company is the creator of among the most human-like expensive humanoid robots, Sophia. Earlier, he has served as the head principal scientist at SoftBank Robotics Europe, formerly called Aldebaran Robotics in Paris. His research interest includes social intelligent and social interactive robotics and AI agents and society. He aims to address societal needs to achieve innovation through scientific advancements, new technologies, and ecosystem creation. On these aspects, he has been actively contributing as principal investigator, researcher, and industrial scientific coordinator in more than 13 plus large-scale national, international, European Union projects along various themes, including healthcare, education, and services. He has published more than 60 research papers and delivered more than 100 invited talks, keynotes, lectures in international venues. So it's a pleasure to introduce him, and pass it to you for delivering a keynote.
Yes, thanks a lot. I wanted to interrupt you for the bio, but I thought you will do the same when I am talking. So I let you to continue but I think I am just trying to share my slide, and if it is working, I will be very quick. Okay, let me check.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, it was good. Even many robots are facing problems.
I'm Hungarian. I know what it takes to pronounce in a different language.
Okay. So I think now you are able to see the slides. Okay.
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. Then we are all set. So thanks again for the introduction and this great opportunity to provide some industrial experience in the community, which is very much needed to be integrated with industry as well as the whole robotics ecosystem and AI ecosystem to create some solid and impactful real world applications. And that's where I will be talking mostly. That what are those applications, some challenges, and how I basically think that we should be moving forward. So I will not go again about my background, but I simply wanted to highlight here that I have been in industry, robotics industry for decade, and also at the interfacing with academics, research community. So I have been at the intersection of different communities and trying to build projects and pushing those from innovation, from R&D to innovation, and then hopefully to some real world deployment and products. So I will try to highlight some of those and share some of the experiences, and we will see how we should be moving forward. So these are some of the robots I have been working, or at least I have interacted with and have some experience. So you can see they are different in shape, size, look, capabilities, and they are also designed for different purpose. But what is interesting is that they have something common, that they are able to interact with the people. So they are somewhat uh, they have to at least understand human in one sense or other. And what does it mean will be clear in, I think, in few next slides. But the main thing here is that we can see any technology or any system or any tool as a medium which is allowing us to interact with the world in different ways. So robots are same in one sense. So we can use robots to interact with the world, and world is obviously everything, including the people, including the environment. It can be Mars, underwater, our supermarket, our hospitals, homes, our friends, anyone which we can think about. So if we will see this type of technology from that perspective, we will be able to perhaps find the application side of this type of technologies better. And that's what I want to fetch your attention throughout the talk. uh, and at the same time, there have been a change in the way robots have been deployed. And that change is very interesting, because in the past robots were mostly isolated, like in a natural environment or in the industrial setup. But with a time, they started to be part of a human environment. And that's how they started to become somewhat social. And again, we have to see what is the right term for this type of robots. But once they are in the human centered environment, there are new R&D challenges which are emerging. The simple thing is that if a robot should be giving something to someone, it can give like this, or it can also give like this. So there are different ways of performing a task, and that's why the fact that there is human in the environment is very important to consider. So there are also new opportunities, because now we have a new tool in our environment to act, to interact, and to collaborate also. And so these are the robots which even change the way robots have been deployed earlier in past, either in industry or in a natural environment. So they started to somewhat coexist with human in the shared workspace, and either teleoperated or fully operated or semi operated. But they started to help and do things together with the human. And I am very careful to use word collaborative robots or not, but these are the terms which are being used for this kind of robots. So basically, they are sharing the space with the human. So once they are sharing a space, then they have to be having some kind of socialness or social intelligence, because they are living in companionship with others, or in community, not in isolation. And they are also in a kind of social environment. So they should have some sort of social awareness about human, and they should be able to interact, engage with people. And recently there are many interesting work also to consider how the social and cultural aspects and norms can be used or exchanged when this type of interactions and collaborations are happening in robots and between robot and human. So there are many ways to achieve those type of intelligence. Obviously, there is a long way to go, but we can think about perhaps identifying some key ingredients in terms of key cognitive aspects or key behavioral aspects, building some computational models for those, like the notion of perspective taking, how the robots should be able to reason from others' perspective, from human perspective, the notion of theory of mind, joint attention. These all can be serving as a kind of basic building blocks. And combining them, we can think about achieving some higher level of intelligence, or higher level of behaviors of those robots. But at the same time, there are different factors which we have to consider, and I think we have already talked about even physical as well as mental safety kind of thing. So we have to really consider all those aspects when robots are uh, doing decision making or planning or simply interacting in the environment. And so from the real people perspective, they want these intelligent boards to be more information rich. So again, the source of information and the reliability of that, and how to enrich, have enriched information, how to use those are the key factors and challenges which we have to think about. Also, they want it to be more intelligent, so we have to decide, define and decide what is intelligence, and we have to even work on grounding the expectation of people in terms of intelligence. Perhaps the science fiction side of whole robotics story might be also influencing the expectation of the people. So there is always this question where that how to set the right expectation in terms of the intelligence level of the robot, and then reliability is also very important, and at the same time the system, the AI or robot should be adaptive to the people. So these are some of the facts in from the user's perspective, which I wanted to share and to set the ground that if we have to think about some real applications, there are some key factors which we have to always consider. Let us watch this short clip if the sound is there. Are you able to hear the sound? Can you please confirm? Okay.
Eat some lollipop.
Did you hear the sound?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
We'll come and teach you. Do you want that, my friend? I will now only I'm teaching. You want one more teacher? Huh? You want one more teacher? Yeah, but you gave me a lot of difficult questions. Maybe he might think that I'm a baby and just give me easy questions.
So this is the interesting thing here, that once we are allowing someone to interact with robots, the real user, real potential user, you will discover many interesting observations and even the applications which we might not have even thought about. So for this particular case, the child is seeing one problem in his life, and then he is seeing that perhaps this robot might have a solution for the problem, and the problem is he is getting difficult questions when he is studying. So this is very interesting that it is showing the expectation also, and at the same time there is other side, that how to ground this expectation and how to fulfill these expectations. But many interesting kind of applications we can think about once we are simply allowing the people to interact with the robot. So that is one of the real outcome which we got instantly just after 5 minutes of interaction with the robot. And obviously there are once these robots are there with real people, there is this notion of safety, comfort, naturalness, and how they can be more social. And we have to see in which way and at what speed we can achieve some of the key aspects of all these factors, and prioritize that which is the top priority for the real deployment, and which is some additional features which we have to put, and that's where the notion of again the standards and benchmarking, all these things will be coming and becoming more and more important. Okay, so some building blocks which I will skip quickly, because these are basically, as I mentioned, we can achieve behaviors from in different ways. So in the past, we have developed some notion which is called mutability map, and then some graphs, and then affordances, allowing robot to reason about different agents, and then planning a task, the interaction and behavior accordingly. And so I can skip those things.
Say
Yes, so
hello.
let me just show this part, that when we are even using the current knowledge of the robot and then trying to teach something new based on what robot already knows, and then how robot can generate some new behaviors.
Look left. Move forward. To greet is to raise the right arm and say hello.
Yes, to greet is to raise the right arm and to say hello.
Greet me.
Hello.
So this is just one part where a robot is learning a new behavior based on some basic primitives which it was already knowing.
To
and
welcome
then
is to move forward, and to greet.
and then we also try to use
Yes,
that
to
new
welcome
learning
is to
to
move
teach
forward and
something
to
new.
greet.
Welcome.
Hello.
To apologize.
And this continues. The thing here is that we cannot pre-program a robot or AI system to uh, be behaving in the way it should be in each and every situation. So there is a need of learning, and when there is learning, then there are many interesting challenges which will be also coming, which I will try to highlight again later on. So once we will see in terms of key functionalities, we can think about robots are having interaction feature. They are capable of navigating, and they are also able to manipulate. And once we combine any of those, we can see different kinds of applications, like an interactive robot which is able to navigate can be a tour guide in a museum, or a robot which is able to interact and manipulate can be facilitating in a day-to-day task and helping in different tasks. So we can again, this is, since it is a spectrum, we have to really pinpoint that which kind of capabilities and functionalities are more important, what are the features according to that, and then the robot should be behavior of the robot should be defined. So from functionalities to application, I think we already know that robots are having embodiment and abilities in terms of look, material, and then sense and displays. And they have functionalities in the way which I mentioned, to interact, to navigate, to manipulate. And they might have social competencies like interpersonal communication, decisional and social learning aspects. But the key is the purpose always, that why we will need all these things. Uh, and once we will see how different domains have been coming. So traditional robotics have been trying to take care of the robot design and some core abilities and functionalities, and AI came and integrated with robotics, or robotics integrated with AI, and then we started to have higher level competencies and intelligence in robot. And still we need society to come closer, and then we will be better able to find the purpose, the real use cases of these robots, and that's where perhaps we will have socially intelligent bots in the future. So now let me go, because we are now talking about those use cases. So let me go to point some of those. So healthcare and elderly care, I think we almost all of we are aware there are some interesting applications of these robots in this domain. And they can be used for personalized and preventive healthcare. They can also be used for boosting physical and cognitive health, and obviously breaking the distance barrier, telemonitoring, telemedicine, especially in COVID scenario. We now know very well the term tele, and then robots are there to facilitate this type of requirements and fulfill this type of requirements. And transcultural nursing is also something interesting. We were in a project which is called Caresses, where we explored how robot can be breathing the cultural aspects of nursing. And there are obviously many applications, and some studies are already pointing that people might feel less lonely, and they sometimes also, since they are not depending on someone else, but on robots, they might have less compromised dignity. But the key here is that why not to use this type of technologies to ensure that no one is dying just because not being noticed on time. So why, how we can incorporate this type of technologies, solutions, systems, so that we can prevent death just because the health cannot reach on time or there was no one to monitor and alert. So this is one application which is very important and interesting. And also there were some studies we were involved to see how robot can boost some cognitive health in terms of being a narrative companion and recalling past memory, interacting based on memories. So I will not again go in detail. And then there were other applications where we explored that how robot can even support physically people with a different condition because of the real embodiment and physical presence. Then next one is autism, where robots with some social skills are seen useful uh, to encourage social skills, verbal and non-verbal in children. And also there have been applications and studies even to train a therapist, because these type of conditions are basically a spectrum. And why not we can even have robots with a different condition which will be helped to train a therapist for different cases and situations. Okay, then robots in education, they can be teaching assistant, peer and co-learner. That is very interesting, that why not we can use robots to encourage a student uh, learn by teaching to a robot. This framework is also very interesting, like learning by teaching. So if there is a need for a particular student to get a deeper understanding or like work on a particular area, a robot can be there to facilitate the teaching, learning by teaching framework. And then at the same time, robot can be companion, entertainer, telepresence, and many other applications we can think about in education, and they can repeat thousands of times without getting some sort of emotion. So sometimes that can be also helpful in education context. And again, coming back to COVID and post-COVID era, so how to ensure that social distancing is not leading to social isolation for the people. So we can think about this type of robots uh, as a kind of support in again there is a spectrum of needs in this current scenario, and we can think about different crafted robots for different needs. So again, I will just show this video where we are part of an avatar prize, where we are exploring the robot uses, tele-operated robot uses for tele-monitoring and tele-assisting to a person.
Please hold out your hand.
So the operator on the right is the robot is serving as the avatar of the operator on the right, and then there is a person who is physically situated in the robot space. So the person can take the temperature, and then it can also navigate around, go and bring some glass of water, a glass of water, or any other kind of assistance needed. And then the camera can be used to monitor the person, another sensor can be used. So I am skipping this video just in the interest of time, but again I wanted to give some idea that we can have avatars of a real human, and robot is bridging uh, person to person who are remotely situated, and they can be used in many applications. And recently this very interesting application is coming, that why not this type of system can support or facilitate a differently able person to even get a job, which he or she might not be able to do. But why not through their robot avatar? And this type of applications are already uh, you can see around, like at least in the news, that these are happening. Okay, so what next? So again, I will skip the videos, but these robots can be like their presence can be through different ways, physical or tele or even virtual characters or virtual robots, and they can support differently, physically, interactively, or even emotionally. Um, and there is again different spectrums, which I should not go in detail because I should come to the focus of the conference, which is the social, legal, and ethical aspects. So until now, we simply discovered some functionalities and then some of the applications in healthcare, education, and now let us see what are some of the issues. So a socially aware bot should be expressing, and then they should be understanding the situation and people. So always there are this question that how they should express, and then how it will be interpreted by the people, and if the robot is understanding rightly the situation or the person or not. And then it can even create expectations, which I mentioned earlier. And then it can be reactive, active, or even proactive. So proactive means the system is even behaving or taking initiatives by understanding the situation. So again, there is a question that how much initiative it can take and how much autonomy it should be having, and what will be the consequences of the actions which it might be taking. And so fulfill expectations is also very important, because of again the shape, size, design, or behavior of the robot might be creating the expectations which might not be really within the capabilities of the robot. uh, and then they have to learn again. So there are again all these things which have different angles, which we should be looking about. The science and technology angle is one, where we can create different computation model and behavior of the robot. But as I mentioned, there are again the social, legal, and ethical aspects which we have to consider. So because the first impression of a robot is the appearance and the behavior, which is basically shaping the expectation, and then that defines basically the long-term relation between the bot and the human. And if there is no long-term engagement between these two agents, there is no use beyond the novelty effect. So that's why all these factors are very much connected, and it is very important to consider even at the design level, the link. Okay, now I should be even more fast. So the design, computation model, and performances are the key things. And the performance, I think it was already mentioned that it should be for the real environment. And since they will be interacting, there should be delay, minimal delay in the robot reaction or action, and there should have right level of autonomy. And unless we are having these features, it is very difficult to uh, deploy a robot for real practical application or long-term uses. Okay, and then there are, I think we already discussed some tests like Turing test and Asimov's laws. How relevant and how practical those can be are the questions which we have to still visit and revisit and define and redefine, even some of the terms which are there. And the uncanny valley. So which side of the valley the boat should be? You might be aware about this effect, the hypothesis of uncanny valley, when robot is too close to being human, but not exactly human. There is this valley which is negatively affecting the perception of the human about the robot. So how relevant it will be even for the long term deployment of robots in human environment, or when the robots are simply a common entity in the environment. will the design or the look will be still that relevant or not? So those are the things which we might be considering or revisiting in the future again. Okay. And like for self-driving cars, there have been lots of user feedback which has been or like a crowdsourcing of the behavior was done, like how the robots, the cars should be taking decision in a particular situation. So should we be doing the same for robots in the human environment, or how we will define some of the rules and regulations for ethical and moral decision making for such robots? And we might not have a definite answer for many of the questions yet. Like we have done a small survey, just simply online survey, by showing a video, trying to ask the questions, direct question, that what should be the priority of the robot, the social accountability or the command of the owner or the privacy of the person, or should robot have some social responsibility or not? So this type of questions, we can see that we are getting some responses, but you can see that there is nothing that we can conclude that this should be the behavior of the robot. And that's the thing we have to even design as an engineer or a developer in the future, that where is the kind of bible of the behavior of the robots, how they should be behaving in different conditions. And then there was this British standard guideline that boards should respect the cultural diversity and many other factors. And we, as I mentioned, we were in a project of transcultural nursing to see how we can have also the cultural intelligence in the boards. Okay, and then some parents are giving interesting feedback. This is a older study from 2017, but there are new versions of this study which you can find. But the interesting fact is, they are saying that such technologies are giving more time to do other things, but at the same time, they are somewhat reducing the quality time with their child. Uh, and that's the balance we have to find with the technology basically. And they also told they would like to get a robot pet instead of a real pet if their child asks for one. And then what about the jobs of dogs and cat? Are they at risk? And the key thing is that is there any potential lack of naturalness and effect on the child of the natural touch? So as this technology will be penetrating more in our society, we will be finding many interesting facts, and we have to find the right balance. That's what I can say at the moment. Similarly, for other survey, they told that real-time AI health and monitoring tracking will be the routine, and they will prefer more, and then they will depend on AI during their golden age. So these are some of the survey-based prediction which we are getting. So we need to have bigger community involvement for privacy aspect, then transparency, accountability, loyalty, role, all these things we have to address. And should a robot say I swear, or what does it mean if AI is saying something like this for the real user? So we have to address this type of questions as well. And should AI or robot be allowed to somewhat deceive someone in a manner for the good of the person, but should the person be informed or conveyed or not, and why not? Because this is again about creating the perception of the robot to the real user. So I'm simply highlighting the questions because I think these are something we should be discussing more than simply giving answer now. Okay, and then as I also mentioned, since these boards are learning, so how to ensure that they are not learning somewhat bad things, and then who is defining bad and good? That's the thing, and that also we don't have a definite answer for this. But definitely these boards are going to somewhat learn from people or from different data sources, and then how to ensure that there is enough data to avoid any bias in the AI system. And uh, should this kind of system be allowed to take life critical decisions or not? and they should even have human-like emotions or showing human-like emotions or not, and they should make ethical and moral decision. And those are again questions. And another interesting questions which I face many times why by interacting with people from different communities and background, that which questions are really within the bubble of social, legal, ethical aspects, which are more on the technology side and capabilities side, or everything is together. So this is also something, the question about the questions, the bubbles of the questions, which we have to somewhat discuss at least. Then standards and guidelines for different components, software and hardware are very important, and their dependency on the use cases are also very important, like a software or hardware which is made for working in a mall-like situation. Should those be allowed in a hospital scenario or not, or indoor or outdoor, and different lighting condition. So there are still, I think we need to put more effort on those standards. And then again, the technology readiness level and grounding, the integrated system, that evaluation of the whole integrated system. It is very complex system, so we cannot simply say that we evaluate one component and things are working. So how we can do all these integrated system evaluation, what will be the guideline standards for those, and then for different operation environments, how those guidelines should be changing. So those will be important even for industries to contribute as well as to be aware about. Okay, so for achieving useful boards, interdisciplinary collaboration is very important, and everybody can contribute really. People who are good in public perception of technology or policy or a standard, at standards making people, or animators, engineers, arts and creativity background, psychology, AI cognition, there is a space for everyone to contribute. And this is basically the interdisciplinary collaboration which we should be focusing and pushing more, and that's what we are doing also in this conference. And that is all, even not enough. Then different stakeholder collaborations are important: industry, academics, end user, and serious technology transfer should be there, not only from one direction but from different directions. And as mentioned in earlier talks, a human-centered approach is very important to really make these systems and technologies useful, safe, secured, and interesting for the people and for our environment, so that we are not on the compromising side, or just trying to adopt for a particular interaction pattern. And defining the purpose is always the key to even find the bubble for all the questions which we discussed so far. Uh, and let me move to this example. So multidisciplinary collaboration. Let us assume we are collaborating with different kind of people with different discipline, and the need was to create a mixed water tap which can uh, give hot and cold water in a manner which people can regulate. And we wanted to achieve something which is on the right side. But perhaps we can achieve something which is on your left. So it is serving the purpose. You are still able to regulate the hot and cold water, and then you are able to get the water. But perhaps this solution is not going to be very sustainable solution, and not going to be reaching to the people. Um, and because there have been many constraints which did not allow the right kind of even transfer of technology or integration, or even lack of the common ground, understanding of the common ground. So those things are very important, which we have to consider, so that we can really create something as a community which will be useful for the people and reaching to the people. Okay, so in terms of market, I think that I can skip, but here I wanted to simply say that new trends are coming. Like there have been different kind of markets, service robotics, humanoid robotics, interactive robots. But when you combine different sectors, even new markets are coming, and those markets are emerging. And the key is that these are making AI and robots more and more in the people space. So again, we have to see how we can enable those robots to be coexisting with us. And new job titles are coming at managerial level, at technical, R&D, innovation level, even non-technical and special expertise are needed in the domain very much, and even new ecosystem of startups which are emerging. So what I wanted to highlight is that it is moving from the basic and fundamental research towards the real world application, industry oriented development and deployment, and there is many interesting things which are coming, and we have to build a community for that, and we are already doing all together different community efforts which are happening. I will again simply I wanted to show that yeah, things are moving as a community in there. So future intelligent robots will be really combining the powers of humans, society, machines, AI, art, and creativity all together. And that's where will be the real application and potential will be coming up, and they will be coexisting with us for us and basically empowering us for better life experience. And what are those life experiences we have to still discover, but some are already coming, like supporting in cases of social isolation, at least being present or not being judgmental in many cases, physical support, providing physical support, boosting self-respect, supporting remote presence, supporting edutainment, and even these technologies are helping to better understand us, the human, our behavior, and then that is also being used for therapy and other applications. So these are the positive sides of deployment of these technologies. But we have to find even a bigger purpose. Everyone can find different, like that child has found one that getting too much difficult questions. So find a solution for that. And so let us see. So this is my son. It is not a robot. And he used to tell that he wants to do three kinds of thing when he is grown up in his professional life. And that is very interesting. When I was child, I was also thinking that I will do this when I am capable enough to do. But now I am simply overloaded in working in robotics. So how to keep this dream alive of childhood dream? Perhaps that can be one way where robots can support and take our loads. And there is this real report which is also very much worrying, that long working hours are somewhat letting people to die. So if we can try to find robots which are trying to achieve this vision, that give more time and space to people to be creative or whatever they want to do, or at least they can do two, three things instead of being overloaded or worried about just one job and what will happen. Then perhaps one day human self-exploitation will be a thing of past. And that's what is the domain, and that's what is the direction and the message which I wanted to give, that let us see how these kind of technologies, these robots, these AI systems will be empowering us, giving us more time and space, and not pushing us to exploit ourselves unnecessarily. So thanks a lot. I will stop here. And thanks a lot for your attention and time. Okay.
Thank you. Excellent. Nice summary of lots of very important issues. So questions from anybody? I have many, but I don't want to take opportunities from others, colleagues. Questions? Okay, just to start, this is probably not too difficult one. We used to have problems with computers, that computers became very powerful, but the software was kind of lagging behind. So there was not enough people to write software and so on and so on. So I got the impression from your talk, especially the last part of your talk, that you need not lots of software engineer, programming the robot, but you need lots of various kinds of expertise to develop the expertise on board of the computer, or on board of the robot. You see what I'm saying? It's like, if you want, robot dealing with, a special kind of patients, like, elderly individuals living alone, that's a different kind of problem psychologically and in many health-wise and so on, physically, then let's say training or helping. You mentioned another example, individuals who would use robots for or deal with autistic spectrum disorder individuals with different level of problems with autism and so on and so on. So what, I mean, as a businessman from the industry, how do you see this problem? Because that's what I see, as a bottleneck for you next.
Yeah, I think you are very much right. And the key here is that we have to see how we ensure the long-term engagement and usefulness of these robots or AI systems, or even the virtual character, which I was trying to say. And I think it will be a mistake that if we will think that we can create the right behavior of this type of robots based on intuition. So that's why we should involve different kind of expertise, not only programmers, but as you were highlighting and as I was trying to highlight in the talk, and that people from different background for the right kind of application set. Perhaps if we have to develop a robot for a person who has dementia, or some other cognitive issues, and perhaps the first thing the robot should be doing is to look in the eyes of the person to create the communication channel and the kind of trust. So those things we will only learn once we will try to get engaged bigger communities. And once we know that what should be the behavior of the robot in a particular situation, then the work of engineers and the AI scientists will be coming in the picture, where they can create the right computation models and right kind of software can be implemented, the reaction can be generated. So it's a co-development effort. That's what I see, even as a researcher, as well as from being the industry side, that we should move in this way, that instead of just trying to do based on intuition, let us be more engaging and with the community. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So just a minor follow-up on this. I don't want to take up too much time from taking time from other questions. So, just like in legal situations, if there is a legal case in the courts, experts are invited on specific aspects like the mental state of the accused individual committed crime and so on and so on. And one of the problems, was that in many cases they used only one expert, and it later turned out, there were controversial issues on various aspects of the problem, and different experts would have advised, the court differently, and so on and so on. And actually, in some cases, it was a matter of life and death, in some examples. Not to mention one of the famous examples I have is, one person was convicted based on a sniffing dog who was basically off the day when the dog was used for searching the trail of who committed the crime. And it later turned out, it was not reliable evidence, and it was accepted as a perfect evidence or something like that. So I was wondering, do you have a policy like we always have at least 2 different experts when you look at or try to develop expert software on your platform, or what?
Again, I think it is very big challenge and big problem which you have raised. And one of, I think during my talk, I was also trying to say that there is not a kind of universal rule book or universal guideline at the moment for many situations, for many social, legal, ethical aspects, and similarly for this self-driving car. And again, the answer to the question that who will be responsible, that we have to even find the answer to that question. If there is some mistakes or some issues, who is going to be responsible? So I think that's why this conference is a place to find answer, or at least start brainstorming about this type of issues and try to find answer together. That will be better, instead of me giving an answer or saying that, yeah, we found a solution which everyone is just struggling to figure out. It will be too much. Okay. Yeah, so I'm on the same boat. That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Other questions?
We have,
Isabel.
Andrew, we have here a question by Tim Gifford. I don't know if the pronunciation is okay. And the question, Amit, is what is important to ensure that robot is used and accepted over time after the novelty has worn off?
Yeah, that's a very important question, because that's what I was mentioning, that we have to make sure that these robots are getting used, or AI system are getting used. And that's where at the beginning of my talk, I try to say that what are the user expectations. So they want that the bots are dynamic and adapting to individuals, basically, or to the situation. And at the same time, they have good amount of information and intelligence in terms of knowledge. So those will be the important aspects when we can see that, okay, after the novelty effect, that something new is there, trying to interact. Once users are discovering more and more, they should be discovering interesting things about the system, and discovering less and less the weaknesses and the limitation. Because once they have explored everything and they know that, okay, there is nothing more to explore, and those are the weaknesses or limitations, then things goes in go in other direction. So it has to be always a loop, like it should be iterative and evolving with time, and based on the user feedback and the way it is interacting, user is interacting with the robot.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I don't know. People are, I think, in different time zones, so it is another problem. So, yeah. Okay.
I could have several more questions, but I don't want to take the stage on these issues, because there are quite a few interesting points.
Yeah, but I think, again, going back to this last question, I think Isabel, you were also saying that the real world testing and the real user testing and real deployments are the key to really understand that how robots can be useful beyond novelty. And long-term studies are yet to be done long enough, because we still don't have the definition that how long-term is the long enough study for these kind of robots to know the real applications, or at least their sustainability in terms of uses. So those things should be done further. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that you are much right, that the robot has to prove reliable and useful. And if it proves to be useful, this problem of being left isn't going to happen. But of course, if it just performs a small set of behaviors and it useful, really useful, people want to go on using it. So I think the systems have to, in a way, to be updated as our computers are in terms of their capacities and their interaction capacities and the things that are required. I think that we can talk in general terms, but robots will have to have the specific conditions of context of use, and what is required from that robot in that specific context of use. If it is to interact with a child in helping him with learning, or if it is going to interact in a hospital, the specific context of use will really define the program that is going to be required and the updated behaviors, etc., according to the user needs.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But I think it's only when, but I think it's only when these prototypes are really deployed, even in a small scale, but are really deployed in the field, it's when we are going to have this feedback.
That's the key. Yeah.
Yes.
Just a silly question, if there is another simple question. Talking about self-driving cars. Obviously, self-driving cars are going to be the same or similar to other cars. So there is a need for insurance for cars. So I mean, do you have to have insurance for your robots when you are selling robots, or the users should have insurance? In certain cases, or what's this? I don't know this. It just occurred to me. Silly question.
Yeah, I think that again, the question about what are the local laws and regulations, and that how these type of systems are seen, what are their status, and again, the policy makers should be coming up with some regulations and guidelines for this, because I am not very much aware that there is again universal guideline for this, for having something that, okay, how robot is seen. Should the robot have insurance, or if it is making some mistake, there should be some insurance cover, especially even like, or should the expenses of robot, if it is deployed for a healthcare application, should it be seen as a medical device and covered by insurance or not? So I think these are the questions which are already somewhere in the community and policymakers lobby side, but the answer is yet to come. But I think perhaps Isabel or someone else might have better answer for this. Okay. because all these are very interesting. That's what I told, that we are at the beginning and there is a long way to go, and we have to find answer for many questions together.
Yes, together.
Yeah.
We have something to talk about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Long day.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Isabel, do you see anybody? Nobody?
This is Elena Dominguez.
Okay, Elena. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the talk, and I've learned a few things on AI. There is work in the ISO community related to robotics that would define levels of safety, specifically towards personal assistance and personnel transportation and exoskeletons in ISO CTC 299. There are some working groups that have that, and there's a standard. So I would expect at some point that the AI community doing work in robotics would look to those standards as a foundation in terms of what is programmed and what in the robots and what they're allowed to do. At some point, a robot, especially working with humans, will have to have some boundaries, more like Asimov's laws, right? To do no harm. At some point, there will be some defined boundaries. How much force can I grab a person's arm with when I carry them into the bed? How quickly should I transport someone given a certain situation down a sidewalk or a corridor? So there is some preliminary work, but it feels like we should have more involvement from the AI community.
Yeah, thanks for this pointer. I am also involved in some of these initiatives through EU Robotics topic group. So there is so I am coordinating one topic group in EU Robotics, and then I am also trying to be present in this standardization topic group on a human robot interaction side, social robotics side, to have first identify where we have to focus in terms of what we have to define once these robots are there. But I have already seen there have been interesting standards, at least in terms of physical safety, as you have been mentioning, and that what should be even the maximum speed of the robot, or where should be the center of mass of the robot, so that there are at least physical harms can be reduced. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you for your talk.
Yeah, thanks.
Any more questions? No? So, well, if no more questions, then I'm not asking more questions. Thank you very much for your nice presentations. Very impressive and nice. Good, interesting, exciting, and challenging answers. Challenging us to find answers, to help you find answers.
Yes, that's the main thing. That, please find answers. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Yes,
thanks. And see you all tomorrow then.
Yes, thank you.